The Simpsons have done it again. These creepy predictions for 2026 will give you chills. One of the strangest predictions tied to The Simpsons is about the next World Cup. Fans claim the show once hinted at a Mexico versus Portugal final, and now that pairing suddenly feels possible. The tournament will expand to 48 teams and be held across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Matches will fill giant stadiums like MetLife in New Jersey and the legendary Azteca in Mexico City. With Cristiano Ronaldo's legacy still casting a shadow over Portugal and Mexico's national team riding a new wave of talent, the idea of these two nations colliding in the last match doesn't sound like fantasy anymore. Analysts already note that both squads are positioned in ways that could make a deep run likely. The prediction seems to hang over the championship like a storm cloud, adding an eerie tension to the hype. Think about how many times fans joked about Simpsons episodes before only to see parts of them unfold years later, from Donald Trump's presidency to Disney's buyout of Fox. If this football final game actually happens, it will once again fuel theories that Springfield writers are tapped into some strange foresight. Whether it's probability, coincidence, or hidden insight, the Mexico-Portugal prediction is becoming a real talking point. Supporters from Lisbon to Guadalajara whisper that destiny itself might be following a script. This World Cup will not only be remembered as the biggest ever, but possibly as another moment when fiction and reality blur in the creepiest way. The Simpsons once aired an episode where Lisa fought against a system that used algorithms to decide children's careers. It was satire, of course, but today that idea doesn't feel funny anymore. Artificial intelligence is advancing so fast that even leading tech companies admit they can't fully control the consequences. By 2026, millions of people could see their daily work changed, or even erased by machines making decisions for them. From customer service lines to legal advice and medical analysis, jobs once thought safe are now being questioned. The scariest part is not just the replacement of human effort, but the possibility of algorithms shaping who gets hired, who gets promoted, and even which voices are amplified online. Analysts warn that by the time the World Cup final is played, the job market might look completely different from what it was only a few years earlier. Workers are being retrained in a rush, while some governments are already testing ideas like universal basic income to offset the shift. Fans of The Simpsons can't help but recall that moment when the cartoon seemed to point toward a future where computers quietly take charge of society's direction. It may sound like a plot from Black Mirror, but it is increasingly reflected in boardrooms, classrooms, and even political debates. If predictions hold, 2026 could be the year when humanity finally realizes that its new digital colleagues aren't assistants anymore, but decision-makers standing over our shoulders. The Simpsons have always loved to joke about outer space, but many of those jokes are starting to feel like chilling forecasts. One of the most famous storylines showed Springfield threatened by a huge comet streaking straight for the town. At the time, it was nothing more than a parody of old disaster films. Yet today, scientists are seriously preparing for that exact scenario. An asteroid was already nudged off its course by a spacecraft a few years ago, and in 2026, researchers will be visiting the same asteroid pair to study the impact. The mission sounds almost like a direct continuation of that Simpsons episode where an ordinary town stared helplessly at a rock in the sky. Add to this another eerie layer, an interstellar comet known as 3I/Atlas will be in range. It isn't just an icy ball. It comes from far beyond our solar system, carrying materials that could predate Earth itself. In Springfield, bizarre creatures like the three-eyed fish symbolized humanity's careless mistakes. In reality, 2026 may show us strange new elements of life hidden in cosmic debris. A powerful new ultraviolet space telescope is also set to launch, with the ability to catch explosive star deaths and cosmic flashes in real time. That means, for the first time, we could see sudden bursts in the sky that look like something right out of a Simpsons doomsday gag. At the same time, missions to the moon's south pole will be searching for frozen water, and new private space stations will be orbiting Earth. All of this is happening under the watchful eyes of projects that now officially track unexplained aerial phenomena. When The Simpsons made jokes about comets, alien invasions, and mutant creatures, no one thought it would ever feel so close to reality. Yet as 2026 approaches, those colorful stories seem less like gags and more like uncomfortable reflections of where we actually might be headed. Fans have been buzzing about a Simpsons scene that seems to predict 2026 politics with uncanny accuracy. In it, Donald Trump faces Homer in front of the White House, both pointing weapons while their teams argue behind them. Many believe it symbolizes not just a personal standoff, but a bigger clash in America's future citizens divided, leadership questioned, and the cycle of unrest repeating itself. The Simpsons once predicted Trump's rise, and now this frame is seen as the next circuit in that prophecy, hinting that 2026 could bring the most chaotic showdown yet. Few things feel creepier in hindsight than how The Simpsons once joked about global illness long before it became a reality. In the 1990s episode known as the Osaka flu, Springfield was thrown into panic when a virus spread from overseas packages. It was silly at the time, yet decades later people pointed at that cartoon and shuddered at how close it felt to real headlines. But the show didn't stop there. Another episode featured tainted meat leading to a kind of zombie outbreak in town with infected residents staggering through the streets. It was absurd slapstick in animated form, but when viewed today it feels strangely prophetic. Scientists warn that future pandemics may not arrive in the same way the world has just experienced, but could just as easily come from unexpected places, mutations spreading through livestock, resistant bacteria in food, or even pathogens thawing from melting ice. The Simpsons, with their strange meat jokes and flu episodes, almost seem to have tapped into that collective anxiety long before anyone gave it serious thought. In 2026, health experts are already discussing how to prepare for unusual outbreaks, ranging from avian strains that jump species to mysterious infections traced back to frozen permafrost. Of course, Springfield played it all for laughs, but the echoes today are eerie. Watching Homer stumble around like a cartoon zombie after eating a bad sandwich suddenly feels less like a parody and more like an exaggerated preview of how fragile modern health systems can be. The writers never meant to predict global crises, yet their exaggerated scenarios continue to line up uncomfortably with what the world faces. If another wave of illness or strange foodborne scare does unfold in 2026, The Simpsons' shadow will once again hover over the conversation, reminding people of how often fiction seems to nudge at the edges of reality. The Simpsons have always sprinkled food gags into their storylines, but some of those jokes now feel disturbingly sharp. In one episode, Homer hoards questionable canned goods in his basement, preparing for shortages that seemed like a far-off joke in the 1990s. Another storyline featured the town panicking when supply chains collapsed over something as trivial as a strike. Fast forward to today, and food security has become one of the biggest talking points among experts. Crop failures caused by heat waves, storms, and shifting weather are already pushing prices up, and 2026 could turn out to be the year when the world really feels it. Shipping analysts warn that oversupply of cargo ships followed by sudden choke points could cause wild swings in availability, leaving some regions oversaturated while others run dry. Add in the growing reliance on a handful of breadbasket nations, and The Simpsons' overstuffed basement suddenly looks less like comedy and more like survival strategy. Even the three-eyed fish joke connects, because many scientists are now pointing to pollution and mutations in our food supply as hidden threats. In Springfield, those problems were always solved with a laugh and a quick reset by the next episode. In reality, governments are already setting up emergency grain reserves and debating how to ration water for agriculture. Analysts whisper that a food shock could ignite social unrest faster than almost any other crisis. So when The Simpsons showed shelves stripped bare and neighbors fighting over basic goods, it felt like parody. But standing in today's fragile food economy, those cartoons look eerily close to the worries experts are voicing for 2026. If shelves really do empty or crops fail in multiple regions at once, many will recall the odd truth buried inside a cartoon town's panic scenes. The Simpsons may have given us plenty to think about, yet they're only part of the story. Now it's time to look at other strange and fascinating predictions pointing toward 2026. Climate scientists warn that 2026 is not just another year on the calendar, but part of a critical window in which global heating may reach frightening new heights. The likelihood of setting yet another global temperature record is extremely high, with many models pointing toward an average that edges closer to the symbolic 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold above pre-industrial levels. If this happens, the world will enter what some researchers call a red zone year, where the intensity of heat waves, droughts, and extreme storms climbs well beyond what most countries are prepared to handle. Across North America, power grids may be strained as millions of homes crank up air conditioning at the same time. while Europe faces rising risks of river levels falling so low that major trade routes become unusable. In Asia, monsoon patterns are shifting in ways that threaten harvests, and parts of Africa may see prolonged dry seasons that disrupt food production. Coastal regions around the world are also bracing for higher sea surges as warmer waters feed stronger storms. To counter these looming risks, cities are rushing to expand green spaces, experiment with reflective building materials, and create shaded, cool corridors where residents can find relief during the worst days. Yet many experts argue that adaptation is moving too slowly compared to the pace of change. If 2026 does break the expected records, it will not only underline how serious the climate crisis has become, but also mark a turning point where adaptation is no longer optional, it becomes a matter of survival. By 2026, the boundary between human thought and machine response may become thinner than ever before. Brain-computer interface technology, once dismissed as science fiction, is moving rapidly into clinical and commercial testing. The goal is no longer just to help paralyzed patients move a cursor on a screen, but to create direct, real-time communication between the brain and external devices. Several companies have already demonstrated patients typing messages or controlling robotic arms purely with thought, and 2026 could mark the year this technology becomes widely available for therapeutic use. Trials are expanding across hospitals where people with severe injuries or neurological conditions are regaining a level of independence once thought impossible. Yet the creepier side of this breakthrough is the prospect of healthy individuals adopting implants to gain an edge instant language translation, memory enhancement, or faster learning. The line between medical tool and lifestyle upgrade may blur quickly. Experts are already warning of an interface divide, where wealthy users could pay for advanced implants while others remain fully human in the traditional sense. Questions of security also loom large if your thoughts can control devices. Who ensures those signals cannot be intercepted or manipulated? In popular culture, we've seen countless visions of cybernetic futures, from The Matrix to Ghost in the Shell. But in 2026, we may finally take the first steps into a reality where those imagined worlds don't feel so distant anymore. What started as a medical moonshot could soon redefine what it means to be human. Factories in 2026 will look nothing like the industrial floors of the past century. The roar of heavy machinery and long assembly lines is giving way to silent robots, digital replicas, and printers that can create complex components on demand. Industrial analysts say this transformation is accelerating so quickly that traditional supply chains may shrink, replaced by localized high-tech hubs capable of producing almost anything. Robots are no longer limited to repetitive welding or packaging jobs. Equipped with advanced sensors and artificial intelligence, they now self-diagnose, reroute around bottlenecks, and collaborate with humans in real time. Alongside them, 3D printing has matured from prototyping to mass production, with aerospace companies, automakers, and even hospitals printing high-performance parts and implants that once took months to machine. The digital twin concept adds another layer. Every piece of equipment and every process has a virtual clone that can be stress-tested, repaired, or redesigned before any real material is touched. By 2026, entire production lines may exist first in the cloud, running simulations to find the most efficient path before a single screw is turned. This level of precision could slash costs, reduce waste, and allow smaller firms to compete with industrial giants. Yet the shift is unsettling too. Millions of traditional factory jobs could vanish, replaced by high-skill programming and robotics oversight. And if one cyber attack can cripple a digital twin system, the potential ripple effects are enormous. The world is on the edge of an industrial revolution where robots, printers, and algorithms aren't just helping humans work faster, they're taking control of how the modern economy builds itself. For years, 6G was little more than a buzzword, something tossed around in labs and conferences as the distant successor to 5G. By 2026, that whisper is expected to grow into a roar as the first working prototypes begin to surface outside research facilities. Engineers are testing terahertz frequencies capable of transmitting data dozens of times faster than 5G, opening doors to real-time holographic communication, ultra-precise industrial automation, and immersive extended reality environments that blur the lines between digital and physical. Early demonstrations may include streaming concerts where every audience member, even those across the globe, experiences the same stage presence in augmented reality, or doctors performing remote surgeries with virtually no delay. Governments and telecom giants are racing to secure patents and standards, knowing that whoever leads in 6G will hold enormous strategic power. Military planners are also watching closely, as such networks could allow swarms of autonomous drones or satellites to coordinate instantly. Yet challenges remain. Steep terahertz waves don't travel far and are easily disrupted by walls, rain, and even human bodies. That means building 6G networks will require an unprecedented density of antennas, satellites, and microcells. Security experts are already voicing concerns, since faster data also means faster attacks if safeguards fail. Still, the momentum is unstoppable. By the time the decade closes, the world may look back at 2026 as the year when 6G leapt from science fiction slides into tangible reality, laying the foundation for a communication era that feels less like an upgrade and more like a reinvention of connectivity itself. So, 2026 is shaping up to be a landmark year in space, honestly. One that feels closer to a science fiction blockbuster than, a quiet calendar of launches. For the first time, commercial space stations are expected to begin real operations in orbit, breaking the monopoly long held by governments. Private companies are building these modular habitats where research, tourism, and even media projects could unfold, turning low Earth orbit into a marketplace rather than just an exclusive science zone. At the same time, China is preparing to launch its Chang'e 7 mission to the Moon's South Pole, a region filled with mystery and enormous potential. Frozen water hidden in the deep craters could someday fuel rockets or support permanent bases. And this mission will send not just a lander and rover, but even a small flying probe to map the terrain from the air. While these robotic pioneers work, NASA is pushing ahead with Artemis II, the first crewed flight of the Orion spacecraft around the Moon. A team of astronauts will orbit our nearest neighbor and return, rehearsing for future landings. Alongside them, Europe's Hera probe will arrive at the Didymos asteroid system, investigating humanity's first attempt at deflecting a space rock. All of these missions overlap to create a picture of 2026 as the year when, humanity truly spreads its wings beyond Earth. The competition is fierce, the goals are ambitious, and the stakes could not be higher. If water is confirmed in accessible form, if commercial stations prove functional, and if crewed lunar flights succeed, the path to permanent off-world living will suddenly feel very real. The coming year may be remembered as the moment space stopped being a distant frontier and became a stage for everyday life. For decades, artificial intelligence has been treated as a tool, something to help analyze data, suggest patterns, or speed up calculations. But by 2026, that role could shift in a way that honestly redefines discovery itself. Researchers are training advanced AI systems not just to process information, but to generate entirely new scientific hypotheses. Imagine algorithms proposing chemical formulas that no human chemist ever considered, or designing materials with properties we didn't know could exist. Already, machine learning has produced promising antibiotics and optimized complex battery designs. The next step is giving these models more freedom to explore vast problem spaces at a speed humans just, cannot match. Critics warn of black box science, where breakthroughs may appear without full understanding of how they work. Yet optimism is high that AI-driven insights could accelerate solutions to pressing issues like climate change, clean energy, or quantum computing. If 2026 delivers even one high-profile case where AI proposes an experiment that proves successful in the real world, it will mark a new era in research. The unsettling twist is the shift in authorship. Nobel-worthy ideas might not belong to a human mind anymore, but to a neural network. It raises profound questions about credit, trust, and control. Who owns an invention created by a machine? And how do we regulate discoveries that even their designers don't fully understand? 2026 could be the moment when humanity is forced to accept that the next Einstein might not be a person at all, but a circuit board humming quietly in a lab. Anti-aging medical science has been pushing against the limits of aging and disease for decades, but 2026 is set to be a year when theory finally translates into visible results. In labs across the world, researchers are working on therapies that repair organs, reverse certain cellular damage, and restore function to tissues once thought permanently lost. Regenerative medicine is advancing beyond experimental stages, with stem cell-based treatments showing dramatic results in early trials. Scientists in Israel have already grown lab kidneys that survived for months, and other groups are experimenting with ways to trigger cells near death to revive themselves and heal damaged tissue. Breakthroughs in anti-aging research are also reaching the stage where human trials may produce data strong enough to suggest real longevity benefits. The possibility of extending healthy lifespan, even by a few years, would reshape economies and societies overnight. While skeptics argue that the complexity of the human body resists simple fixes, optimism is growing that we are, honestly, on the verge of a new era of healthcare. The most unsettling prospect is how quickly such breakthroughs could split society between those who can afford enhanced longevity and those who cannot. A medicine that adds decades to life may exist, but will it be accessible? Just as earlier moonshots redefined space exploration, the medical moonshot of 2026 could redefine what it means to grow old. For the first time, the dream of slowing down the clock might not belong to science fiction anymore, but to hospitals and clinics around the world. For nearly 2 decades, the smartphone has ruled daily life, shaping how we talk, work, shop, and even navigate our streets. But by 2026, that dominance may finally start to crack. Tech giants are pouring resources into lightweight augmented reality glasses, wrist-based devices, and voice-driven assistants that make staring at a glowing rectangle feel, honestly, outdated. Early prototypes already let users see directions projected in front of their eyes, take hands-free calls, or translate foreign languages instantly. Younger generations raised on wearables and immersive media are quick to adopt these tools, and analysts predict that the cultural grip of smartphones will loosen fast once the alternatives become affordable. The shift won't happen overnight. Millions will still keep phones as backup devices. But the symbolism is striking. Just as DVDs vanished when streaming took over, the pocket phone could fade into the background as society embraces more seamless ways to stay connected. 2026 may be remembered as the first year when carrying a slab of glass and metal started to feel old-fashioned. That's about it. What are your predictions for 2026? Share them in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.